Hey guys, Athena here. Welcome back to Code 3 Life. If you're new here, my name's Athena and I'm a paramedic. I watch movies and TV shows about paramedics and EMTs and kind of comment on how close they got to reality or how on a different plane of reality they are. And then sometimes I make videos where I talk about life in EMS and changes that are being made in the industry and that kind of thing. I was gone for almost 2 years because of a combination of COVID and depression. But now I'm back, but COVID is still a thing, unfortunately. I was gonna have this video up a few weeks ago, and then I got COVID for the second time. So here we are. This video is an AMA. Since I'd been gone for so long, I just kind of wanted to take some questions from people and kind of like get a feel for what people are looking for. So I have some questions that have been compiled from both the comments on the YouTube video and from my Instagram. I will link my Instagram below. But first, I want to talk about my sponsor. Yeah, I know, I'm kind of surprised too. Today I'm sponsored by Legacy Lantern, and no, I'm not selling out. I actually pursued these folks. I went to him and I was like, you should sponsor my next video. And he was like, okay, that sounds good. So let's talk about Legacy Lantern. I'm really excited that they're sponsoring me because they represent something that's really, really important to me, which is giving people peace around death in general. It's essentially a time capsule of everything that is going to be super, super important after you die, which is your memories. It's essentially a video diary where you can upload videos, you can record self-interview questions, memory stories, and save them to a secure cloud. And so if you want your child to get a video of you wishing them a happy birthday on their 18th birthday, if you pass away before that time, when that child turns 18, the vault will open and will send your child this video. And your approved contacts can access this cloud when you want and how you want. When a lot of terminal patients are asked like what their biggest fear is around death, a lot of the time what they mention is this fear that they haven't left a legacy for the people that they love. And so with Legacy Lantern, you know for sure that you're leaving behind a legacy that your loved ones can connect with and access. And it is really important to me to give people every aspect of what a good death should be. And in my opinion, a good death includes you being at peace, knowing that your family members will be able to remember you and you will be able to pass on what you find most important to your family members. So thank you very much to the people at Legacy Lantern for sponsoring this video. I will link their website in the description. Let's get to the AMA. Okay, first question from Mitz. What calls do you find the most tiresome? Not sad tired, but funny tired. Probably the ones where I feel like I'm babysitting grown-ass adults. Honestly, that's most calls, to be honest. Or, in one particular case, this one time, calling and literally telling the 911 dispatcher, I feel like I'm slipping away. I feel like I'm dying. I mean, I get hangovers suck, but like, I wish I had the self-confidence to be that dramatic. Question from Elliot Leisure or Leisure. Leisure? Have you seen the movie Bringing Out the Dead? It's got good actors. It's about a paramedic, but it's a long movie. Could be something to react to, maybe a few different scenes because it's a movie. I actually have reacted to that. I will either link it in a card or down below. I don't know if I know how to link cards. Today might be the day that I figure that out. But I have actually reacted to that movie. For some reason, it took me like 3 attempts to even get through that movie because the first half is amazing and then the second half is just like, just kill me. It's just depressing. I don't like it. Okay, next question. Itamide and Succinylcholine asks, what's your zodiac sign? I'm a sign from God. I'm just kidding. I'm a Virgo with a lot of trauma responses. Artist Circle asks, for the AMA, what are some of the strangest EMS calls you've had? Bro, there are so many different flavors of strange. There's like taking a guy to the hospital because his ex-girlfriend found out that he was sleeping with a new girlfriend. I'm sure that's how that was going. And she got high on meth and snuck into his house and tried to cut off his penis with a bread knife and missed. There's the ones where I'm transporting someone who is convinced that they're Jesus Christ. In that case, it's actually not a great idea to ask them to prove it. I'm not going to tell you how I know this. There's like getting called to a hoarder house because you have to dig the patient out of their house because they can't leave. There are the really medical, unusual ones. I had one, it must have been last year, the year before, but this lady fell, hit her head. When we got there, people weren't sure if she was breathing because every now and then she would stop breathing. And I was like, that's kind of not fun. And she was like completely unresponsive. And we ran emergent to the hospital and her heart rate was like really, really weird. It was like kind of slow and then it would become normal and then it would become slow again. And her pressure was really, really high. And it occurred to me like, she's got Shane Stokes breathing, which is a type of breathing that you get when you've got a really severe head injury and there's a lot of intracranial pressure and it starts putting pressure on your brainstem. So you start like, then you stop. And it's weird. I had never seen it before. And I was just like, oh, that's what that looks like. And her pressure was really high and her heart rate was so low. It was beating like 30 times a minute. It wasn't because of Cushing's triad. It wasn't a really, really slowed down sinus rhythm. She was in a heart block. She was in a 2nd degree type 2 borderline 3 heart block. And so I just didn't treat it because I was just like, her pressure is through the roof. If I increase her heart rate, that's just going to increase her pressure and her brainstem is going to come shooting out her ass. And so as I didn't treat that bradycardia, that slow heart rate, her pressure came down. As her pressure came down, the intracranial pressure came down. And as that came down, she started to wake up. There's calls like that where you're just like, what the fuck just happened? I would almost have to be asked about like a specific genre of call to be able to come up with a specific call because I've just run so many weird calls at this point that it's kind of hard to just like come up with them. I have to be reminded by something. That's why I love story time and that's why I love going on tangents on my videos because it's like, this reminds me of that one time. Like that's why I do that is because that's pretty much the only time I can remember weird ass calls that I've been on. Katie Lewis had 2 questions. Number 1, you said in your last video before you took a break, everyone in EMS has a squick or something they can't do. What's yours? I don't like knee injuries. I don't know why, but like dislocated kneecaps or like broken fingers. I almost like can't, like badly broken fingers. I like, bleh, like so many other things I can deal with. But for some reason, it's knees and fingers that I'm just like, bleh. And everybody has a bodily fluid that they can't handle. Mine is lung butter, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when you have really, really bad pneumonia, I'm sorry, I can't even really like continue talking about it without getting like grossed out. It's not good. I don't like it. It's not good. Number 2, how has COVID impacted you as a medic? Have you managed to stay healthy? Like I said in my last video, COVID has impacted pretty much every part of my job. I really do want to make a separate video on how COVID has changed my experience in EMS and the experience of a whole lot of other people in EMS. And so I'd like to go into more detail about how COVID has changed EMS in that video. How COVID has changed me personally, it has changed a lot of things for me personally. I'm sure it probably contributed to my depression a little bit, although to be honest, I was already not in a good place when COVID really started, and so I definitely wouldn't blame COVID for my depression. In April of 2020, right when it started, I was transporting a COVID patient from a VA clinic to the hospital. He knew he was positive and he was told to come back if he started having difficulty breathing. He developed difficulty breathing. He went in, his oxygen was really low, so they put him on oxygen and then had to ship him over to the hospital with us. I lost seal on my respirator for 3 seconds, and that was how long it took for COVID to get into my mask. And exactly 14 days later, I developed kind of like a weird feeling in my chest. You know, if you've ever been to a pool, an indoor pool that uses too much chlorine, like kind of that feeling of like just a little bit of irritation. And honestly, I kind of needed a break anyway, so I just called and I was like, my lungs feel weird, I'm not coming to work today. And over the next few days, I developed a cough and the chest pain and all that other shit, blah, blah, blah. And I developed a fever as well, and it was getting pretty high, like about 101. And so I was told to contact my doctor, so I contacted my doctor and he said, let's do some blood work. And so I went in to get some blood work done, and he called me like 2 hours later freaking out, and he was like, your platelets are too low, you gotta go to the emergency room. And I'm like, okay. So I did that. I went to the ER, not the ER in the system that I worked for, by the way, because I know all the fuckery that went on in that hospital system, and at least if I went to a different system, I knew that they would have their fuckery, but I wouldn't know what that was, and so that's how I preferred it. And so I went in and they were like, oh yeah, I mean, if you're having chest pain, let's scan your chest for a clot. And they scanned my chest for a clot, and they repeated the blood work, and they came back and they were like, well, you don't have a clot. Your platelets are kind of low. They're definitely not like dangerously low. What we're more concerned about is the fact that you have no white count and your D-dimer's through the roof. And a white blood cell count is basically what tells you whether or not your body is fighting off an infection. And in some cases, in really severe sepsis or in a lot of viral infections, including flu, it can decrease your white blood cell count. And mine was non-existent. And D-dimer is basically something that indicates that your body is currently breaking down a clot. And if your D-dimer is positive, that almost always means that you either have a clot in your lung or a clot in your leg, or a clot somewhere else. But generally, because the clots in your lungs and in your limbs tend to be bigger than the ones in your heart or your brain, it usually indicates one in your lungs or your limbs. And so they were like, yeah, so maybe it wouldn't be such a bad idea for you to kind of let your fever get a little high sometimes because you have no white blood cell count right now. And I was like, sweet. And then they sent me home. And so I did my best to let my fever do its thing, but it was getting as high as 103, 104. And then at that point, my husband was like, nope, you're taking Tylenol. And so it took me like 10 or 12 days to really feel like I was capable of standing up without passing out. It took me another couple months to realize that I was still short of breath a lot of the time. And I just kind of blew it off because I was like, I have anxiety. Anxiety makes me short of breath. Like, it's probably just that. And I was so depressed that I was never exercising. And so I never realized how much cardiovascular ability I had lost until I started coming out of my depression a little bit, and I realized that I couldn't even walk quickly across a parking lot without getting short of breath and having my chest hurt. It's hard for me to walk upstairs. Even walking slowly while pulling the cot with a patient on it makes me short of breath and makes my chest hurt. I'm working on slowly building things back up, but if I can barely even walk, it's hard to do things like run or do cardio or things that improve your cardiovascular reserves. And so we are going on almost 2 years later, and I'm still recovering from COVID. I was diagnosed with long haul COVID in August of last year because I finally went in because my husband, who is very loving, was finally like, oh my God, just go see a doctor about this stuff because it is not normal. And I was like, no. And he said, okay, at least do a 12 lead. And so I did. And the 12 lead indicated that I had some right-sided heart strain patterns, which in a person of my age indicates that I either currently or in the past had a clot in my lung. So that's what convinced me to go into the doctor. My D-dimer at that point was very low, which meant I didn't currently have a clot in my lung, but I probably developed one at some point last year, most likely during the move from Colorado to Illinois, because I was sitting in a car for 14 straight hours and my chest pain and shortness of breath got worse after that. And then I guess it cleared on its own. So then I had to go in and I had to get an echo done of my heart, and that was negative, so that's really good. And I'm like slowly working my way back up. But like when I got COVID, it wrecked everything. I lost 25 pounds in 5 months. I did not mean to lose that weight. I did not want to lose that weight. I am trying still to gain that weight back because I am underweight, and it has been kind of scary and frustrating, especially hearing people like my age be like, oh, well, I'm not gonna get my vaccine and I'm not gonna wear a mask because like I'm young and so I'll be fine. Like I was 26 years old when I got COVID the first time, and I feel like I'm fucking 50 right now. And so it makes me incredibly frustrated to hear bullshittery like that, because I was in pretty great shape when I got COVID, and now I can't even run down the fucking block. So there's that COVID rant. I'm vaccinated, I'm boosted, I wear my mask everywhere, honestly, because it's more comfortable, because why the fuck would I want people looking at me in any capacity? If I could just like exist without a corporeal form, that would be amazing. And so when I got COVID last week, it felt like a cold. I got the Omicron thing and I'm over it, and yay. But I also like lost my voice, which is why I couldn't make this video. Very long tangent aside, that's how COVID has affected my health. Next question from Smex Bucket on Instagram. Have you ever seen 1972's Emergency? It's mostly about two firefighter paramedics and their rescues. The show started when paramedics weren't widespread yet, and the show really helped to raise awareness and expand the paramedic program. I actually have not seen most of Emergency. Like I've seen bits and pieces here and there, but I haven't watched a lot of it, and I haven't reviewed it on this show because that was 50 years ago, and at this point EMS has changed so much that there probably isn't anything that I could really comment on that would be the same. Even the culture actually has changed quite a bit in just that amount of time, and the medicine is night and day difference. But I would check it out just for like historical purposes. That would be really interesting. Also on Instagram, Katie R. Lewis Official asks, what is your main or top advice for new EMTs as they enter the field? I would say have patience and resiliency. Being a new EMT is incredibly difficult. I definitely struggled a lot with it when I was a new EMT, and to be honest, I didn't really have enough time as an EMT to develop a lot of confidence. Because I know I've said this before in a previous video, but when I applied to go to paramedic school, I wasn't applying to go, I was applying to take the test. And I did so well on the test that they offered me a spot that was a one-time offer, that if I refused, I pretty likely would not get another offer. And so I went to paramedic school, in my opinion, earlier than I should have. I think that for EMTs, 2 years of full-time experience in a 911 system is probably about the minimum that I would recommend, because that is enough time to teach you scene dynamics and how the ambulance works and kind of how the political climate is, as well as like how to do assessments. And I don't mean like sample history, OPQRST. I mean like actually knowing what questions to ask in what situations to actually get to the bottom of what you need to know. I'd really just recommend have patience with yourself, because the industry is not very kind to new EMTs. There's a lot of pressure, and a lot of medics are kind of mean to new EMTs because like they don't have a lot of patience with them, or they're just like, if you don't know how to do the job, then get the fuck out. But the fact is, everybody started where you are right now. And if someone is really, really mean to you, that is a reflection of them, not you. You do have to have your shit together. You do have to know your meds. Like if someone is yelling at you for not knowing how to do something that you really shouldn't be expected to know how to do, that is their problem. And I know it really sucks and it can be taken personally. Like I definitely took it personally when I was an EMT, but if you can kind of find a way to think about it as just like, this person's an asshole and I'm just here to learn, then that's really the best advice I can give you for how to actually like kind of get past that learning curve and actually start to learn. I'd recommend finding a mentor, or really just somebody who puts up with you because I can tell you that the people in my career who kind of like saw that I was struggling and kind of took me under their wing a little bit and was essentially willing to be kind to me as I learned, I will never forget those people. And I can't even tell you how comforting it is to have that one person that you can go to and just be like, okay, this person is not going to be a total dick to me for like the next 5 minutes. And then I can go back out into the world and continue to do my thing and fuck shit up. Finding those people who are willing to understand that you're new and tolerate you is really important. Please remember that you are going to make mistakes. When I look at people who are new EMTs and I think to myself, either they're going to make a great EMT or medic, or this is probably not for them. Usually what is the indicator for me is whether or not they're willing to make a decision. Because if you are an EMT and you're just like, okay, patient, chest pain, I think I'd like to give aspirin. Of course, run that by your medic or the more experienced EMT. And if you're messing up, they will let you know. If they let you harm a patient, that is their problem. And that is such a big problem. That is not something that you can solve. But, you know, maybe that person will be like, let's slow down. This patient is a 22-year-old female with a history of panic attacks who's breathing at 40 times a minute. Maybe aspirin is not the most appropriate intervention. But it's those EMTs who are just completely unable to make a decision where I'm just like, okay, the one thing that you can bring to the table right now is your ability to make a decision. Whether or not it's a wrong decision can be fixed, but a person's inability to make a decision is really difficult to fix. Be willing to look stupid in front of people. Be willing to laugh at yourself in front of people, especially if you're going into fire, because the fact is you are going to be the station's bitch for at least the first year while you're a probie. And then after that, you're still going to be the new guy. Have some humility. Remember that the time will pass. No matter how you spend the time is going to pass. So you may as well spend it learning as much as you can and building up those relationships with the people around you. And also be willing to learn. I see so many new hotshot EMTs who are like 19 years old who just graduated and think they know everything. And it's just like, slow down, my guy. You can learn something from every single person you see. Sometimes all you can learn from somebody is what not to do, but you can still learn from that person. And so even if you are 100% sure on something, listen to what people have to say. Sometimes you have to listen to what they have to say and be like, I wouldn't trust them to put a Band-Aid on me, let alone take care of somebody in cardiac arrest, and just ignore that. But listen first. I could probably go on about this topic for quite some time, but I'm gonna stop there. Leslie Underwood 33 says, reflecting back, I vaguely recall that you were somehow involved with the development of a new show with a friend of yours. May I inquire about the status of that project if you feel like responding about it? Yeah, I was actually working on a film with Katie R. Lewis Official, where I was consulting on the scenes that included first responders and just medical procedures and things like that. She is still working on that. The script is finished, but there is so much that goes into making a movie that I didn't even know about between like finishing the script and actually like filming the movie. And so she is still working on that. I'm not really involved in that process. I will probably become more involved once they start filming. I will be on set providing consultation for like how to set up the back of the ambulance, what people should be wearing, that kind of thing. Aurora Riles asks, what's the weirdest thing you've ever had to pull out of someone? The truth. But on a serious note, we don't really pull things out of people a lot of the time, because if it's something like a knife, that's the trauma surgeon's job. If someone has been stabbed and the knife is still lodged in them, a lot of the time that is up against a vessel and it is the only thing keeping that person from bleeding out. So we leave knives and stuff like that in place. We'll stabilize it. We'll like put gauze around it so it can't go anywhere, but we leave that in place. And the same goes for things stuck in people's buttholes and urethras and noses and ears. If the person has had difficulty pulling something out of themselves, I'm certainly not going to do it. I know that I've transported a guy who had something up his urethra, and he said, yeah, I got a penis, I got a pencil up there in my penis. See, this video isn't monetized, so I can say shit like that. And what I said was, uh-huh, I believe you. Sit here, please. And I did not look. 9 times out of 10, if somebody says that something is wrong with their junk, my response is, I believe you. Sit here, please. Because unless it's a life threat, I'm not going to do anything about it. That's the doctor's job. So unfortunately, I haven't pulled a lot of weird things out of people. I have pulled food out of people's tracheas before, but that's pretty normal. If they choke after having a cardiac arrest or go into cardiac arrest because they choked on something, that's pretty much the only time that we will reliably pull something out of someone. I think that's everything. I'm not seeing any other questions. If I missed something, I apologize. Maybe I'll answer it in another video if you just remind me about it. But yeah, that's my AMA. You can expect a reaction video for me in my next video. Although I've been watching back over my videos from before and I was like really pissed off like a lot of the time. That's like pretty easily explained by the fact that I was horrendously depressed, but like I was really mad for a lot of those reaction videos. And like, I honestly don't really think I can muster that kind of reaction about anything anymore. So what I think I'm gonna do as like a direction from now on is veer away from reaction video and go closer to like script doctor video, because ultimately Code 3 Life LLC, my company, is registered as a consulting company. Like it would make sense for me to watch things and be like, actually, here's how you fix it. Hollywood, hire me. Instead of just being like, I hate this, flip a table. So I am going to be doing another reaction video as my next video, but more along the lines of like, hey, here's how to maintain the drama and action of a scene, but make it actually good. So yeah, that's all I had for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Keep watch for my next video, and I will see you in the next one.